Most people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they spend figuring out what they actually want their life to look like. Think about that for a second. Hours researching hotels, days comparing flights, weeks planning an itinerary for 14 days somewhere. And then they spend 30 years working toward a retirement they've never actually designed.
Today I'm going to give you something different. 3 questions. That's it. 3 questions that will do more for your retirement than any financial calculator, any Monte Carlo simulation, any target date fund ever will. Because before any of that math can actually serve you, you need to know what you're doing the math for. And most people don't.
If you've been watching this channel, you already know what I believe. Retirement as a finish line is the wrong goal. Full stop disengagement is dangerous, psychologically, cognitively, physically. And most retirement plans are missing the most important elements entirely. But knowing that isn't enough. Knowing the model is broken doesn't tell you what to replace it with. Knowing that purpose matters doesn't tell you what your purpose actually is. That's what today is about. A real process for figuring out what you actually want. Not a vague sense of it, not a highlights reel of travel and grandkids. A genuine, honest answer to the question that should be driving every financial decision you make. What do you want your life to actually look like? The process I'm going to walk you through today comes from a man named George Kinder. If you've never heard of him, George Kinder is widely considered the father of life planning. He's a financial planner, an author, and someone who spent decades asking why the financial planning industry was so good at managing money and so bad at helping people figure out what the money was actually for. He developed a framework built around 3 questions, deceptively simple on the surface, genuinely profound when you sit with them honestly. Because when you know what you actually want, when you can articulate it clearly and specifically, the financial plan that supports it becomes cleaner, more targeted, more fulfilling, and almost always more achievable than you expected. So here's what I want you to do before we go any further. Get something to write with, a notebook, your phone, whatever works. Because these questions are not meant to be absorbed passively. They're meant to be answered, right now, in writing, honestly. There are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. There's only what's true for you when you let yourself be honest about it. And I'd encourage you to answer each question completely before moving to the next one. Don't read ahead. Don't let the next question influence the one you're on. Take your time. This is the most important financial planning work you'll do today. Question 1, the dream question. Here it is. Imagine you are financially secure. Not rich necessarily, not Elon Musk wealthy, but secure. You have enough money to take care of your needs, now and in the future. The financial constraint is completely removed. How would you live your life? What would you do? What would be different? What would you change? Let yourself dream. I want to pause here and say something important before you answer. Most people have never allowed themselves to answer this question honestly. Not really. Because money has always felt like the limiting factor, the thing standing between where they are and where they actually want to be. This question removes that excuse entirely. There is no budget. There is no mortgage. There is no salary you need to protect. There is no boss you need to answer to. Just you. And the life you would actually choose. So write it down. And be specific. Not, I would travel more. Where would you go? For how long? With whom? What would you do when you got there? Not, I would spend more time with family. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday? What are you doing together? What conversations are you having? Not, I would pursue my passions. Which ones? What does that look like at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning? The specificity is where the truth lives. Take as long as you need. Write everything that comes up. Don't edit yourself. Don't be practical. Don't be reasonable. Just be honest. That's question 1. Question 2, the urgency question. Now I want you to imagine something different. You visit your doctor, and your doctor tells you that you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good news, you won't feel sick. You'll feel exactly as you do right now, healthy, capable, fully alive. The bad news, you will have no notice of the moment of your death. It could be 5 years from now, it could be 10. You simply don't know. What do you do with the time you have left? What changes? What stays the same? What do you suddenly realize you've been putting off that you can no longer afford to put off? Write it down and notice what shifts between your answer to question 1 and your answer to question 2, because something will shift. When time becomes finite, when the horizon becomes visible, certain things that seemed important suddenly don't matter as much, and certain things you'd been quietly ignoring suddenly become urgent. That gap is information. Whatever falls away between question 1 and question 2 probably wasn't as important as you thought. Whatever intensifies, whatever becomes more pressing, more non-negotiable, more visceral, that's pointing at something real. What are you willing to do differently when you know time is limited? And here's the harder question underneath that one. Why aren't you doing it now? That's question 2. Question 3, the mortality question. This is the one that cuts deepest. I want you to stay with it. Don't rush through it. Don't deflect. Your doctor calls you with news that changes everything. You have 1 day left to live. Just one. Sit with that for a moment. Feel what comes up. Don't push it away. Now ask yourself, what did I miss? What dreams are going to go unfulfilled? What did I always mean to do but never got around to? Who did I want to become that I never became? What did I not say? Who did I not tell? What did I leave unfinished that mattered? Write it down, all of it, even the things that feel embarrassing or impractical or too late, especially those things. Because this question isn't designed to make you feel regret. It's designed to show you, with complete clarity, what actually matters. Not what you think should matter, not what your parents told you matters, not what your colleagues or your neighborhood or your tax bracket suggests should matter, what matters to you. In the deepest, most honest part of who you are, that's question 3. Now I want you to do one more thing. Look at all 3 answers together. Read them slowly, all the way through, and look for the pattern. What appeared in all 3? What kept showing up regardless of how the constraints changed? Regardless of whether you had unlimited money, a shortened timeline, or a single day? That recurring theme, that thread running through all 3 answers, is not a coincidence. That is your answer. Not a goal, not a preference, an answer. The thing your life is actually trying to organize itself around when you get out of your own way. That's your starting point for everything that comes next. So you have your answers. You have a pattern, a thread, things that kept showing up across all 3 questions regardless of how the constraints changed. And I want to acknowledge something before we go any further. Some of what showed up on your list has nothing to do with money. Family, friends, experiences, relationships, time, things that matter enormously and don't belong in a financial plan. They belong in your life, starting now, not someday, now. More time with the people you love isn't a retirement goal, it's a today decision. But I'm a financial planner, so I'm going to go back to the money piece for a minute, because buried in your answers, alongside the family and the travel, there's probably something else, something that keeps showing up, a skill, an interest, an area of genuine expertise or curiosity that maybe, just maybe, you could start building around now. Not in retirement, not someday, now. While you still have a salary coming in, while you still have financial stability underneath you, while the stakes are low enough to experiment without fear. Here's why this matters so much. Most people treat retirement as the starting line for finally doing what they actually want to do. I'll pursue that when I retire. I'll build that when I have time. I'll figure out what I'm passionate about once I stop working. But here's what I've seen happen when people wait. They arrive at retirement with no runway, no practice, no proof of concept, no audience, no clients, no skill set built around the thing they actually wanted to do. And the thing that felt exciting and possible while they were working suddenly feels overwhelming and uncertain without the financial safety net underneath it. The fear that was manageable becomes paralyzing. The solution is simple. Start now. Start small. Start while it doesn't matter if it works.
Because building something on the side while you're still employed does three things that waiting until retirement can never do. The first thing it does is remove the financial pressure. When you start building something while you still have income, a salary, a business, a practice, you can afford to be patient. You can afford to experiment. You can afford to fail and try again and iterate until you find what works. You don't need it to generate $10,000 a month immediately. You don't need it to replace your income next year. You just need it to start, to breathe, to become something real. That patience is enormously valuable, and it's only available to you if you start before you need it. The second thing it does is give you something to walk toward. We talked in earlier videos about the danger of retiring from something without having something to retire to. A side project that you've been building for 2 or 3 years or 10 years before retirement solves that problem completely. You don't leave your career and step into a void, you step into something that already exists, something that already has momentum, something that already has clients or customers or an audience or a body of work behind it. The psychological difference between those two experiences is enormous. One feels like an ending, the other feels like a transition. The third thing it does is change your financial math. Even modest income from something you love changes the retirement equation significantly. We've covered this before, but it's worth repeating in this context. If your purpose-driven side project generates $30,000 or $40,000 a year into your 60s and 70s, even part-time, even scaled back, even doing it 2 or 3 days a week, the pressure on your portfolio drops dramatically. You draw down less. You delay Social Security longer. Sequence of returns risk nearly disappears. The number you need to feel financially secure gets smaller. At a 4% withdrawal rate, $40,000 of annual income is the financial equivalent of having an extra $1 million in your portfolio. Not because you saved more, because you built something you'd never want to fully stop doing. Let me make this concrete with some examples, because I don't want this to feel abstract. I want you to see what this actually looks like in practice. Meet Carla, the consultant who monetized curiosity. Her answers to all 3 questions kept pointing to teaching, mentoring, helping other people navigate complex decisions in her field. She was a senior executive, 25 years of deep expertise, and she had never once considered that the thing she loved most about her job, developing the people around her, was something she could do independently. She started small, 1 coaching client on weekends, then 2, then a waiting list. By the time she was ready to step back from full-time work, she had a coaching practice generating $60,000 a year. She didn't retire, she transitioned. It's the most meaningful work she's ever done. Meet David. His answers all pointed to the same thing: travel. Specifically, helping families have meaningful travel experiences rather than just tourist ones. He started a travel consulting side project. Not a travel agency, a consulting service. People paid him for his knowledge, his connections, his curation. First year, 2 clients, $4,000. Third year, 18 clients, $35,000. He's 64 now, still doing it, has no intention of stopping. The income matters, but what matters more is that he wakes up every morning genuinely excited about what he's working on. Then there's Jim. His answers all pointed to craft, to making things with his hands, to the quiet satisfaction of building something physical in a world that had become entirely digital. He started woodworking seriously in his late 50s, built things for friends and family, put a few pieces on Etsy almost as an afterthought. By the time he retired from his corporate career, he had a small but loyal customer base, a workshop he'd invested in thoughtfully, and an identity waiting for him on the other side of his last day at the office. He earns maybe $15,000 a year from it. That's not why he does it. He does it because it's the answer that showed up in all 3 questions. And he built it before he needed it. Now, I'm not telling you that your answers will lead to a business. They might not. They might lead to something that doesn't generate income at all, and that's completely valid. Purpose doesn't have to be profitable to be worth building. But I've found consistently that when people are honest about what they actually want, when they follow the thread that runs through all 3 questions, there is almost always a version of it that can generate some income if they want it to. Not because money is the point, because building something real,
Something with clients or customers or an audience gives it structure, accountability, and forward motion. Some of the things your brain needs most.
So here's what I want you to sit with.
You have your pattern from the 3 questions, the thread that ran through all 3 answers. Now ask yourself honestly, is there a version of this that I could start building right now? Not next year, not when I retire, right now. Small, low pressure, just enough to make it real. What would the smallest possible version of this look like? 1 client, 1 project, 1 piece of work that lives in the world under your name. That's all it takes to start. I want to give you something concrete to do this week. Not someday, this week. Because the biggest trap with exercises like the 3 questions is that people do them, feel something, get genuinely moved by what comes up, and then close the notebook and go back to exactly what they were doing before. The insight fades. The urgency dissipates. Life fills the space back in. And 6 months later, they're in the same place, wondering why nothing has changed. So here's your assignment, 5 steps, this week. Step 1, find 30 minutes of uninterrupted silence. Not in the car, not with the TV on in the background, not between meetings, somewhere quiet. Somewhere you can think without being pulled in another direction. Tell your family you need the time. Close the door. Put the phone face down. This is the most important financial planning work you will do this year. Treat it that way. Step 2, answer all 3 questions in writing. In order. Completely. One at a time. Don't type them. Write them by hand if you can. There's something about the physical act of writing that slows you down enough to be honest. Don't edit yourself. Don't be practical. Don't be reasonable. Just write what's true. Question 1. If you had all the money you needed, how would you live your life? Question 2. If you had 5 to 10 years left to live, what would change? Question 3. If you had 1 day left, what would you have missed? Take as long as each question needs. There's no rush. Step 3. Find the pattern. When you've answered all 3, read them back slowly. Look for what appeared in all 3 answers. The theme that kept showing up, regardless of how the constraints changed. Write that pattern down separately, 1 sentence if you can. This is what matters most to you. Not what should matter, not what you think you're supposed to say, what actually matters. Step 4. Ask the building question. Look at that pattern, that 1 sentence, and ask yourself honestly, is there a version of this I could start building right now? Not a business plan, not a 5-year strategy, not a fully formed idea, just the smallest possible version. 1 client, 1 project, 1 thing that makes it real rather than theoretical. What would that look like? Write that down too. Step 5. Do 1 thing. This is the step most people skip. Take 1 action this week that moves toward the thing you just identified. Not a big action, not a scary action. 1 email to someone who might be interested. 1 conversation with someone already doing something similar. 1 hour spent making the first rough version of the thing. 1 thing. Because the gap between people who design lives they love and people who don't isn't talent. It isn't timing. It isn't resources. It's whether they did the 1 thing this week. The people who do this exercise and act on it, even imperfectly, even slowly, even with no clear destination, almost always end up somewhere better than they expected. Not because the answers were magic, because the answers were honest. And honesty, real honesty about what you actually want, has a way of reorganizing everything around it when you let it. Your financial plan, your schedule, your decisions about where to spend time and energy and money. When you know what you're building toward, really know, the path toward it becomes clearer than you expected. The obstacles that seemed insurmountable start to look manageable. The number you thought you needed starts to look smaller. The retirement you thought was decades away starts to feel like something you're already living your way toward. That's what this exercise is designed to do. Not give you a plan, give you a direction. The plan comes after.